Hello and welcome to my Nikon Z mount 50mm F1.2 review. And boy, did I make a mistake with this lens. I'm going to tell you more about that later on though. I will also be sharing some real world images I've taken with this lens. And some test chart images too as well, of course. So in this review, we'll be looking at sharpness, vignetting, distortion, focus speed, focus breeding, and bokeh too as well, of course. As well as talking about its size, weight, and how I have personally found using this 50mm f1.2 lens over the last few weeks. So come on, let's get into it. I'm dying to tell you all about it. So yes, Nikon did send this lens out for this review, but it will be sadly going back to them in a few days. And no, I was not paid for this review, so these are my own personal thoughts on using this lens now for a couple of weeks. So as a fashion photographer and portrait photographer, a 50mm lens is a great lens to have in your gear bag, especially one as wide as this one. F1.2, it's hard to beat that. But I already have 3 other 50mm lenses here that I bought and paid for myself, so I never really felt the need to splash out on the 50mm f1.2 lens. But was I wrong in that? Now that's a good question. Now I'm going to be comparing all 4 of these lenses in another video to give you an idea how they compare as regards sharpness, distortion, vignetting and all that too as well. So stay tuned for that one. That one is coming soon. So first off, I have to say this lens is incredibly well made, as you would expect from any Nikon S-line lens. You do feel like you're getting value for money, or very good value for money, straight out of the box, as this is not a small lens, as you can see alongside the other lenses. So the build quality of this lens is top notch, and the feel and the construction of it are absolutely perfect. Again, you would expect nothing else from a Nikon S-line lens. The focus is beautifully smooth, and there's a lovely big grip on that there, so when you're hand holding that, it's really easy to find and navigate that. The buttons are tactile and they feel very solid. Again, typical of an S-line lens. We have that nice little display. I'm going to show you that in another couple of seconds. And then we also have a control ring down below here. So here I have the 50 f1.2 attached to a Nikon ZF. I've also used it in the Z8 and the Z7 too. So what I can do is switch on the camera. You see the display lights up. And to give you an idea of focus throw here now, it's about 90 degrees. So there's a 90-degree focus throw on this lens. But you can see it shows here the focusing distance. And if I press the display button now, it changes to aperture. So when I adjust my aperture, I can see on screen here what my aperture is. On the side here, we have the lens FN button, which I generally set to starlight. So in other words, every time I press this, it switches on and off starlight mode. And then here we also have the auto manual switch. And we also have the control ring here too as well. We can set that to change your ISO, your aperture, exposure compensation. There's a whole lot of settings you can set that to. Now, to give you a bit of a background here, I currently own the Nikon Z mount f1.8, which is a great lens. I bought the f1.8 before the f1.2 was available. I also have the old f-mount 50mm f1.4G here. Then I have my absolutely loved and adored Sigma Art f1.4 50mm lens. This, without doubt, was one of the nicest 50mm lens I have ever used on my older Nikon f-mount bodies. Getting back to the 50mm f1.2 now, this lens is by far the biggest 50mm lens I have here. But it's not too big, and when you're used to using the 24-70 f2.8 or the 70-200 f2.8 lens, this lens feels perfect on your camera and about the right size and weight from a balance perspective. To give you an idea of size then, here is the 24-70 f2.8, and when I extend that out to 70mm, you can see the two lenses are practically the same size, including the lens hood of course. Again, from a weight perspective, this lens is not light at 1.09 kgs, but it's not too heavy either. It's a bit beefier though, and not something I would just casually take with me if I was going for a ramble or going for a walk somewhere. This is where the f1.8 version, with its 418 or 419 grams of weight, has an upper hand. So at the start of this video, I said I made a huge mistake with this lens, and I was thinking I didn't need it in my kit bag, because after using it now for a few weeks, I have been slowly convinced more and more every single day that I do need it. And I should have bought it a few years ago. And I'm going to show you a few photographs I've taken with this. This is a photograph I took at f1.8. I shot at f1.8 because I want the front drummer in focus and the people going back along roughly in focus too as well. But even looking at the focal plane, look how sharp the footpath is, or the road is down along here, and it just ever so softly transitions. It just really does render very nice backgrounds. And I took this photograph like this so you can actually see the buildings dissolve as you go back along. So that's shot at f1.8. Then I shot this photograph then too as well again at f1.8 as the subject was closer. But you can see the contrast in this even at f1.8 and how just the background dissolves completely. It really is a stunningly beautiful lens. I wanted to give a small bit of movement to the hand here too as well, just to show the person actually is playing. Obviously, if I chose a faster shutter speed, I would have frozen that. If I went up to 1/250 a second and picked my moment right, I would have frozen that hand. Even in these low light conditions, there was no problem whatsoever with the 50mm F1.2 finding focus incredibly quickly. Again, a close-up shot here again in exactly the same conditions. And at f1.2, the background is just gone. It's as simple as that. The background has just been beautifully removed from the photograph. You can still see what it is. You can still see all the people behind. You can still see the street sign. But it's not in your face. There's a lovely, soft texture to it. Then going over to the fire show, this photograph was actually shot at f1.2. I bumped my ISO up to ISO 12,800 here now, and there has been a small bit of noise reduction applied to this too as well, of course, and the image has been sharpened slightly. But look at the background. That is just absolutely stunning. Again, not a beautiful photograph because I was about 3 people back in the crowd here trying to capture this, so I had to hold the camera up and hold it out with 2 hands and take the shot. So it wasn't very steady, and hence the reason why I took this photograph at 1/200 of a second. And I also had the inbuilt VR switched on in camera. This one then again, the same thing. You can see here now at f1.2, even the tint behind, which was really sticking out like a sore thumb, it's not so much of a problem here at f1.2. But the speed of the autofocus on this lens and how positive it locks on was something I wasn't expecting. So an absolutely massive thumbs up for the 50mm F1.2 here. So to give you an idea of how the bokeh looks on this lens, here's a photograph shot at f1.2. Here's one at f1.4, and here at f1.8, at f2.2, at f2.8, and at f4 now. This photograph then is shot at f11 to give you an idea of how the starbursts look on this lens. And here it is at f16, and here is another photograph at f16 again. And you can see there are 18-point starbursts coming off this lens. So looking at focus speed here now next, we're focused on Dobby's eye. And in the background, I have a camera. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to focus in on the camera now. And you can see that was actually quite quick, considering the fact we're at f1.2 and Dobby is actually at the closest focusing distance of 45 centimeters. So it really is pushing the focus to its limit here. Now, just to give you an idea, I'm going to focus on a few different parts of the mat here. Again, this is at f1.2, and it's going to give you an idea of how quick this camera is actually focusing and how precise it is. There's no focus hunting in this, and that is the real beauty of it. Trying it several times, it does find its target relatively quickly. Again, going to Dobby, because of the fact that it's up close, it does take a small bit longer because that's only 45 centimeters away, so that's an extreme focusing test for you. To demonstrate focus breeding, or the lack thereof, I have a few lights here. So what we're going to do is look at the lights here now, and what I'm going to do is focus on Dobby, and we'll see how much the lights shift in the image. So looking at the center point of the light there now, I'm going to focus back in the camera. That's exactly the same thing. And then pulling back in along again, same thing. That is absolutely brilliant. There is little to no focus breeding in this lens. Yes, the background of the image is blurring out, obviously enough, because it's shot at f1.2. So it appears like the image is changing, but the image is not actually shifting. So if you're a videographer, the Z 50mm F1.2 lens is the lens you should be buying. It's as simple as that. Let's start to take a serious look at sharpness and how it performs not only at center sharpness, but corner sharpness, and more importantly, how sharp is this lens when it's shot wide open? And then, of course, at what aperture does the sharpness truly peak? So just popping open the Nikon Z 50mm test chart results. So this is the test chart itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into the center of the image here now. So this is the image zoomed in at 100% here now, shot at f1.2 and ISO 200. As you can see, there is some nice detail here. All those lines are nice and sharp. So this center sharpness, even shot wide open on this lens, is incredibly good. So that's f1.2. Going to f1.4 here now, and you can see that detail here is after popping even more. Then when I go to f1.8 here now, you can see that is sharper again, and that is a ridiculous amount of detail to be pulling out of a lens at f1.8. At f2.2 here now, it's just fractionally better again. And then moving to f2.8, that is criminally or insanely good. The level of detail that's popping here now in these small little, minute little artifacts in an image is just criminal. And when we go to f4, it's just fractionally better then again. So that's f5.6. And going back to f4, it is just fractionally better at f4, I would think. There's very little difference in it though. Then going to f8, it has gone fractionally softer again for center sharpness, but there's very little in it. Then moving up to f11, you can see that is going softer there now again. And f16, it's gone softer again. For me, I would say f4 is by far and away the sharpest for center sharpness on this lens. But this is a ridiculous amount of detail to be looking at. If I zoom back out long now again, that's the section we're looking at here. So that is really pixel peeping at its finest. So the 50mm F1.2 for center sharpness is just crazily good. So for corner sharpness now, what we're going to do is we're going to be concentrating on the bottom corner here. So let's zoom in there and have a look to see how sharp it is at f1.2. So here we are now zoomed in at 100% in the bottom right hand corner at f1.2. And as you can see, the corner sharpness, it is soft. Now we are zoomed in at 100%, and I have to specify that. But that is the extreme corner. You can see here isn't too bad. Along here isn't too bad. This is actually quite good. And this is quite good. It is zoomed in at 100% though. But the one thing I'll show you here now is once we go to f1.4 here now, this is f1.4. You can see how much sharper this is after getting here already at f1.4. The lines are starting to pull in here too as well. And this is extreme corner sharpness. Those lines are really good now. But if we go up to f1.8, this is what I found. Look at that. Look at that detail. Look at all of that. That is exceptionally good, apart from the bottom, the very, very bottom corner here now at f1.8. Going up to f2.2 now, and as far as I'm concerned, that's practically perfect. Look at the lines here. Look at the detail here. Look here. Now, it does get better once we go past f2.2, because when you go to f2.8, it gets sharper again. You can see a small bit more fine detail here, and those lines are getting better. But for me personally, I found you have to go up to f4. If you want really sharp corners, you can see the details here and here are all starting to pop now at f4. At f5.6, I'm not seeing any massive gains. We're looking at the minute detail inside here now. So this is f5.6 and this is f4. There's practically nothing in it. And what we already found is f4 for corner sharpness was the best. So if you want a really sharp image, f4 is going to give you a beautifully sharp image, even down to the corners. I genuinely was not expecting results like this. And this 50mm f1.2 lens is now by far and away the sharpest 50mm lens I have ever tested. I think you can already see how truly special this lens is. If you're looking for the most perfect 50mm lens, then I think this is the one for you. This is definitely the lens for you. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is vignetting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom back out along here now again. So as you can see, there is vignetting in this photograph. This is shot at f1.2. Now the one thing you have to bear in mind is this is a completely white background. When you're shooting a normal photograph, you won't see that much of a difference between the corners and the center of the image. But if you want to be hypercritical, this is f1.4. Stopping down to f1.8, as far as I'm concerned, that's gone now. That is completely gone out of F1.8. So for me, vignetting is absolutely no issue whatsoever. This is a really good time to step into distortion. And this is one of the things that absolutely amazed me about this photograph. There's no distortion in this photograph. It is criminal. There might be a really tiny amount, and I mean really tiny amount, but there is no distortion in this photograph. That is absolutely amazing. I think this is one of the few lenses I've ever tested that I can actually quite clearly and convincingly say this lens is practically distortion free. The one thing that really surprised me about the 50mm F1.2 as I zoom in towards the center is there's no chromatic aberration in this image anywhere. I have looked and I've shot loads of photographs in different scenes and whatnot, and I can see why this lens is as big as it is and why it weighs a small bit more, because if you want something that's going to be as optically perfect as this lens is, then you know you're going to have to create something special. Now, speaking of perfection, the other thing I want to point out here is contrast. This is shot at f1.2 here now, and the contrast out of this lens is simply mind-blowing. For me personally, this is without doubt the most optically perfect 50mm lens I have ever used. I'm really questioning why I didn't buy one all along. And I know this is pixel peeping, but at the same time, this is just insane. So this brings me to my 50mm F1.2 review conclusion. And overall, this is a stunningly beautiful lens. And it has worked faultlessly for me for the last few weeks, and more importantly, created some seriously beautiful photographs for me. I've tested this lens in extreme low light situations with fast moving subjects, and it just excelled in every way possible. It has proven itself to be pin sharp, fast, and it gives lovely background separation, and there is little to no distortion, and vignetting is no issue. It's absolutely no issue. The lack of any serious focus breathing then has made using this lens for videography a pure joy. If you're thinking you should buy it, then you already know the answer to that one. And for me, I'm really going to have to think about what I'm going to do now. I suppose all in all, I want to say thank you, Nikon, for sending this lens out to me and for opening my eyes and making me realize what a mistake I had made. I'm also going to be doing a full comparison video between these four lenses. So if you have one of these and you want to see how they stack up and how they compare, that's going to be coming out really soon. So make sure to subscribe and hit that bell to stay up to date for the latest videos. Thanks again for watching. And as always, if you have any questions, please do feel free to ask them. And see you out there, or see you in the next video.